Let me, before Disco gets in this next question. So it says here that, and I don't remember this, Bobby, so maybe there's nothing to it or there is something to it. It says, has a controversial singles match with Punk where he kicks out of the go to sleep before 3. What happened there?
We had a match on Dynamite, and it was early. And they were definitely like.
How long have you been there?
I'd only been there
only like 2 months.
Right? Yeah, a couple months. I think it was the week after it was me and Danielson, which was like easily one of my favorite matches.
He's the man.
Yeah. And it had been like a 10-year span from the last time he and I got to wrestle. And we did have similar martial arts styles. So I really always enjoyed mixing it up with Brian. So even a decade later to get that chance, that was awesome. Working Punk, it was like everybody knows, everybody saw the UFC fights. Like,
right.
You're not
the guy calls spade a spade. The guy was the worst UFC fighter in their history. I mean, you can't sugarcoat that. It is what it is.
Sure.
Right. So,
and it's okay.
The only guy, Bobby, that I would, I give him credit because he had the balls to try it. Most guys won't even try it. But I'm going to give the number one spot. And I don't know if you remember this. This is going way back, Bobby. Remember that big, 600-pound black guy that got knocked out by the...
Yeah, that was UFC 1.
Yarborough.
Right. Yeah. When the
Manuel Yarborough.
Right. Yeah. Small guys versus
that
the big guys.
That would be my number one.
He became an actor.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
So Punk's known as being problematic, right? In ROH and
I've always known and heard that about him, but because my interactions with him were always minimal, I didn't pay much mind to it. When he comes back to wrestling after all these years, after what he managed to embarrass 2 industries at the same time, with the UFC thing. Let's be honest. I had to
Jamaican horns, Feeney.
I had to explain to my wife, who, at the time was my girlfriend, but she asked me while we watched the fight, why does he keep pirouetting, spinning in a circle? And now this might be a little bit nuanced and the average fan probably won't understand this, but
a lot of the boys listen to this, so they will.
Yeah. Well, what he was doing was when you miss a round kick, especially if it's your back leg, the momentum takes you all the way around in a circle. But it's the momentum. The circle, the spin is a byproduct of throwing it correctly. He does not throw them correctly. Therefore, when he would throw it, he was turning himself in a circle.
As if it was the momentum.
Yes, as opposed to the momentum doing it. So my wife was picking up on it accurately, going, why is he making a circle? And the only reason I could perceive it the way it was because I know what that's supposed to be.
Right.
And that, to me, that's disrespectful to martial arts. You need to have some self-awareness and know that, hey, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to embarrass the people that trained me. I'm going to embarrass myself. And this isn't my bag. Regardless, the thing becomes, so 8 years later, you come back to pro wrestling. And I don't think Punk's a bad pro wrestler. I really don't. I think from a pro wrestling foundational standpoint, back in Ring of Honor, I saw him in those days when he, wore basketball shorts and boots and wasn't wearing kick pads and trying to steal Kenta or Bryan Danielson's gimmick. He was good. He was just a good, solid, pro wrestler.
Good detail guy too.
Yeah, but you go on pay-per-view and you embarrass both industries, and then you come back to pro wrestling and now not only are you insulting the fans' intelligence by putting your martial arts out there on display, but you're insulting guys like me, guys like Kyle O'Reilly, guys like Bryan Danielson by asking us to put over your bunk martial arts because the stuff doesn't look good. And this is what I tell young guys now. Once you get that foundation, and I think you guys could relate to this, once you have that foundation of pro wrestling basics, the magic is to start adding what makes you. So for me, that was martial arts, and it's been a process to get that in there in a way that looks good. If that's not your lane, like leave it for the guys like I just mentioned, the Brian Danielsons, the Kyle O'Reillys. I will put myself in that category as well. Samoa Joe. Like I don't want to see Samoa Joe and Punk wrestle against each other where they're both doing similar styles, because Joe does it so much better. Just be self-aware, man.
So my question of the original question, was there some sort of problem between you and him or it's not true that you kicked out, or what
I did kick out before. Right. So before the match, there was no problem. Right. I didn't. And during the match, there was no problem. Like I knew his martial arts were what they were, and I didn't expect him to be any different. In the match, there was a point, we knew that the finish was the go to sleep. He gave me the Iggy on the cover. And like I've gotten and given the Iggy before, at times at the end of the match, just to right. Just brothering, right? Your brothering, hey, good one.
Right.
This one felt different. I don't know if it was the way he squeezed or the amount of times he squeezed. It seemed like he was trying to get my attention, and I had a split second to decide, like, well, I'm going to let that window close and just stay down for the pin, or I'm going to kick out. And maybe he just wants to pick me up and hit me with it again because the match went well or whatever. I don't know. It was literally a split second decision. I had to either hit or get off the pot, and, kind of kick out is what I did. And to this day, like, I'll own it and I'll defend it.
What did he do? He picked you up and gave you another one? What happened after
didn't. That? The referee, Paul Turner, kind of counted 3, and then he awarded it. And then people, of course, because, pro wrestling fans, and with the dirt sheets and everything, now they are so turned on by seeing something they don't think they were supposed to see, as opposed to like, hey, follow the storylines. That's actually what you're paying your ticket for.
Right.
They want to know. And so that thing caught fire in a way that it really, there wasn't that much to it.
So let me ask you a backup question. When you got to the back, were you admonished or talked to by Tony, by your agent, by Punk, by anybody, or nobody gave?
It was one of the strangest experiences of my career. I go to the back, and obviously I'm aware of what happened and whatever, but I thought we had a good match prior to that.
It was very good.
Phil is a marginal athlete at best and a god-awful martial artist. So I thought, like, wow, we actually didn't have a bad one, all things considered. I got to the back, and when I walked into Gorilla, Phil was in Tony's ear, and they were a distance from me. And so I'm already starting to see the political Phil Brooks.
Did it go through your mind Did it go through your mind at that time? He's probably burying me.
Yes, of course it did.
Okay.
Because they looked at me, and they, whatever. I immediately went over and like approached it, and they went separate ways. Phil was then in his locker room. Phil, had his own locker room in AEW, which to me, listen, people's opinions vary on this.
I've never been impressed with that, to be honest. Like,
well,
I remember,
Samoa Joe didn't have his own locker room. Brian Danielson didn't have his own locker room.
WCW, Hogan and Macho and like Piper had their own locker rooms, but like Hall and Nash and everything, they were all in the locker room.
Hogan, Macho, and Piper, bro. That's a whole different. I do not take issue with that. You know what I'm saying?
But I'm just saying, it's like the thing that I took issue with them doing that is Hogan would always talk about, hey, the team and stuff. I'm like. Right. Like what teams? Like you get your it's like they're like, don't use words like that. You know what I'm saying? If you like one special treatment and talk about the team, it's like it's kind of like you and the team. That's the way.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, but in all fairness, Bobby, when I was in let me just say this. When I was in WWE, and I'm talking about a long time ago, like 89, 90, Hogan had his own locker room, Mach had his own locker room, and Ultimate Warrior had his own locker room. And so it's nothing new to AEW.
No, and I really didn't. I didn't really care. That didn't bother me. It just always stuck out to me that Samoa Joe and Bryan Danielson, who could have definitely requested or demanded their own locker room, in my opinion, never did. So to me, that spoke volumes about them. I don't really care what it said about Phil. I don't. Right. It just is what it is. But for me, it was like, oh yeah, he's one of the boys, and it will always be. Brian, one of the boys. Like I'll take either of those guys in my foxhole.
Yeah, and great people too.
Great people.
Did you and Punk eventually talk about it or have a confrontation, or was it just? It seems like it just was behind your back stuff.
I went into his locker room because that's where we called the match. So my bag was in there. Because again, I was being.
Plus, you always thank the guy after the match.
Yes, and before all this, I was being very respectful to, like, okay, yeah, you're CM Punk. You don't impress me, but I'm not going to be the turd in the punch bowl here. Like, I don't really, whatever. Let's go out and have a good one. So I went back to get my stuff, and he and I talked back there. And to be honest, he was. How colorful can language be on this?
As colorful as you want.
Okay, yeah. I said it on. I did an interview with Steve Fall from NBC, and it was right around this time. And I can't think of another word that describes it, but like Phil acted like he was very passive aggressive about like, yeah, oh yeah, it's fine, it was no problem. But it was like, dude, we're men. Like, I'm somebody's father. You can speak openly and honestly to me. Like, you don't need to go grab the booker and get in his ear and bury me or put me over. I don't need your favor, but I definitely don't need you undercutting me either. Just say it to my face, dude. And that, I saw the way that he operated through that whole thing, and it definitely rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't have an axe to grind with him after that. It just became like, okay, I see you. I know who you are.
Right.
And so I treated him that way from that point out. There was one time where things got heated with Kyle and I and the FTR boys. And Dax and Cash, we've always gotten along with them very well. So when I say heated, it got professionally heated.
Right.
And it was something that happened on TV. It spilled over a little bit to the locker room. And in the midst of that, I definitely was a bit emotional about some things. And when somebody was talking to me, I think it was the Bucks, Phil came up to me and Phil, I think what he doesn't understand is that, like, the Undertaker is the locker room leader because the boys gave him that position. You don't give that. You can't anoint yourself. Right. And that's what he did and was attempting to do in that moment. I don't know what happened, guys.
That's all right.
Okay.
As long as we can hear you, we're okay.
Yeah. He said something about, like, keep it down and whatever his comment was. And I just, the look that I gave him, I didn't see it. So I don't know what it said. But I then said to him, like, I don't know who you think you are, but please get out of my face.
Right.
And, for me at that point, just as being a man, like, enough of the pro wrestling, because listen, at the end of the day, this is fiction.
Right.
Phil, I will fold you like a wet nap. I don't I'm somebody's father too, so I don't need to be fighting anybody. But, like, you're not my locker room leader. Mind your business. Like, beat it, geek. And that's just
Did you feel, Bobby? I'm sorry for cutting you up. Did you feel like besides anointing himself the locker room leader, which, as you say, for the people that aren't in the business, the locker room picks the leader. You don't pick yourself. Okay. Right. But besides that, did you feel like maybe it sounds like that he was a little bit nosy and was trying to get in everybody's business, like, or no?
I don't trust much that comes from him because his history is what it is. Like, we're going all the way back to Ring of Honor days when I didn't know him. I would hear things about his political, string pulling, and I've heard it all since. And then the way my father raised me was like, you don't believe it's how people treat you. And I gave him an opportunity to treat me better than the way that I had heard he operates. And he had the opportunity. And with that, he did what he always does. So I'm left to have no opinion of you other than like, yeah, you're kind of a slimy dude. Not to mention that. Go ahead.
So you're not surprised at how that turned out with him in AEW?
For me, it's the heat that I ended up getting with Tony. I believe a lot of it stemmed from the stuff with Phil, and I was not quiet about his bad martial arts because I feel like I'm qualified. Not even feel. I know I'm qualified to have an opinion on it. And after he behaved the way that he did with me, I was like, okay, well, I won't be quiet about it. And then here he is on Dynamite on national TV in what is like the biggest match of the company at that time. It was against Moxley, I believe. And here he's got these spots in the match where he is asking Moxley to sell like knocked out from a head kick. Like, Phil, do you know what your head kicks look like? Like, my 10-year-old daughter's not knocked out from your head kick. Like, just don't insult. You're insulting the fans and you're insulting your coworker, John Moxley,
because he's got to sell lame. Yeah.
There you go. Right. And have some self-awareness. Know what of your stuff looks lame and what doesn't. I've had to do it too. I grew up a huge Chris Adams fan. And because I did Taekwondo, the super kick is nothing more than a step behind side kick, which I always threw well. But when it came to pro wrestling, my super kick was not super. It was very mediocre.
So you didn't throw it.
Is it a super kick in MMA called a skip side kick?
For me, it was a step behind side kick in that was Taekwondo. That was the first thing that I trained in. And the super kick, obviously, like we pro wrestling it up a bit. I mean, the step behind side kick is generally thrown to the body, not really a face.
Bobby,
but
you know what's interesting is that I actually, when I was, I trained, I would go to the school here in Vegas, and I was a trainer for a while. But I would do one class a week, and I would just do just striking and selling. Because I was saying, look, if you're going to come out of my system, you're going to look like you know how to fight. You're going to look like you know how to throw a punch in a wrestling match. That's basically what I was teaching everybody. But I actually did a pretty good job of teaching MMA guys. Like I had how
to transition.
Yeah, Stephan Bonner.
Yeah.
Because I was like, okay, you just find some basic martial arts moves that you can do, and just teach them how to pull the spin kick, punches. And then Bonner was actually really good at this. He would do the thing where you get the guy behind the I can't believe him when you have the guy behind the neck. No, when you have the guy, you have him in the clinch. Okay,
clinch. Yeah, the plum.
He was.
Yep.
I actually had trained and they looked really good of like throwing knees to the head when you have the guy in the clinch, and he was like hitting the guy. So and they would go out there and they look like a martial artist that knows how to professional wrestle. You know something? And I think what happens is when you don't have guys that they never did martial arts, and now they're doing martial arts, but in a fake fashion. I think you're absolutely right about that. It does expose, it makes it. I always said I never liked fake MMA in wrestling because I just go watch MMA. You know,
right?
why would you?
100%.
Right, and plus the wrestlers don't know how to sell it good enough. You know, these days. I mean, like, you know, bro, like I said, the super kick all of a sudden is like you kick somebody in the chin,
right?
They should at least get knocked down. You know,
right?
like, you know,
right.
Right.
Shouldn't
So
be
I mean,
staggering.
It's right. They stagger.
Oh, they're staggering for the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. Like the Canadian Destroyer, bro. When that first came out, it looked like a devastating move, and it could still be a devastating move, but nobody sells it as such.
Right.
It's what we tell them it does. It's we're the puppet masters, and it's what we tell them.
Now we've worked ourselves. So